Hi, Whole leaders. I thank you for joining us. It's week 7, and it's really, I guess it's bittersweet. The last week, the last day, it's been an amazing journey. And I just wanted to, I guess, first of all, open with, I guess, a bit of appreciation for you signing up, joining this journey. Even if you haven't been able to join the sessions live, the fact that you're watching this video now means that you're really pushing yourself and wanting to improve, wanting to, I guess, address some areas in your life and making that choice to do that. So hats off to you for doing that. Today, we're going to go through, in the last session with Justine Kirk, she went through SMART goals with us yesterday. We ran through some specific example that we just made up as a group, which was really great. So we'll recap on some of those points today, go over that worksheet, and just, I guess, probably have a little bit of a reflection on what we've talked about over the past 7 weeks and just generally how that might show up, and what we can do when looking at not only setting these goals, but putting them into action. So thank you for joining us for our very last day, Justine.
No worries. Thanks for having me. So I'll share my screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here we go. So this is the worksheet that everyone should have, and they should be able to work through it and answer the questions. So we didn't actually bring this up yesterday when we were working through the presentation, and it probably would have helped if we did. So this might help to work through what we need to put in each of these sections so that they can understand how to pull their goal together and how to build it up. So the first question is, what is this goal? So the goal is whatever it is that you want to achieve. So it can be, if we follow on from our examples yesterday, running a marathon, it can be improving your business revenue, it can be improving your overall well-being and health. So you just need to write your goal in this section. So write down whatever it is that you want to do. And as you go through, you might step back into this bit and edit it and make it more specific. But if you're remembering, when it's a SMART goal, it needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, you need to be able to achieve it, it needs to be relevant to you and your life, your business or personal life, and there needs to be a time frame around it. So if we jump back into the marathon analogy that we were using yesterday, you might start your goal by saying that you want to run a marathon by June 2022. And so it's quite specific because you want to run a marathon. It's measurable because we know that a marathon is 42.2 kilometers and it's achievable. So people can run a marathon. It's achievable, but there is a plan behind it. So you couldn't just say, I want to run a marathon next week if you've never run a kilometer. So you really do need to be honest about the achievable portion. So what are you going to do and what time do you have in order to achieve it? Impacts a lot on how achievable that goal actually is. Relevant, it needs to be important to you. And if it's not relevant, it's unlikely that you're going to stay the course, especially when something changes and it gets a little bit hard. If it's not relevant, it's unlikely that you're going to be committed and follow it through. And time bound. So we know that we've said we want to run the marathon by the 30th of June, 2022. So that means that you know that you've succeeded if on that date you've completed a marathon. So when you're working through the next part, why is this goal important? So this is sort of tying back into the achievable and the relevant part of the SMART goal. And it's really important to think about why is the goal important? What is it that you want to achieve or change or do? And what's the main driver? We have lots of people have New Year's Eve resolutions. The most common ones are I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to correct my financial position, or those kind of goals. but is it really important? And why is it important? Do you fundamentally want to change who you are, or how you behave, or how you spend your time? Or do you really want to improve your business? Are you committed to the reasons of why the goal is important? So this is a real key in achieving that goal.
Yeah, I feel like, sorry to interrupt. I think
No worries.
that was a really, yesterday when you asked that question after I'd written down my personal goal, when you asked that question, I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? I think to really dig into that question is going to be the motivation and the why to keep you accountable. Because, say if you say, I want to increase my revenue by 30%. Why? Well, so I can have more money. Why? So I can do this, so I can do that. But then just keep asking why? Because underneath that, there's going to be a particular thought and a particular emotion that you're trying to achieve, reach. And even then go deeper and deeper and deeper again, going, well, why do I want to be able to own my house outright? What's that going to bring to me? Okay, safety and security. Okay, why is that important to me? So with all those things we've learned over the past 7 weeks, start tying in some of those tools and practices. What I covered in week 6 with the triangle of thoughts, emotions, limitations. Apply that when you're doing your goals, because you can say, okay, why are these goals important to me? What's been the limitation in the past? Okay, it might be X, and this is the emotion that it brings up, and these are the thoughts. Where does that stem from? Because a lot of, as you say, with New Year's Eve resolutions, people set them. And I think most people just set them knowing that by February it'll be okay to drop them already. And it's
Absolutely.
like, well, what's the point of doing that? And culturally, we don't really support those New Year's resolutions as much as we say we do. But it'd be interesting. Sorry, my phone's dinging. I think it's interesting to be able to, like I said, implement some of those past 7 and 6 week tools when we're doing this goals thing, to really dig into it and make sure that we do things differently this time around.
Absolutely. And you may be setting a goal, or you may be applying the SMART process to a goal that you've been trying to achieve for a while. And it may be that because you haven't understood the importance of the goal, or what the driver is, or what the outcome is, and why that is important to you, could be the reason why you're not succeeding in achieving it. It could also be that maybe it's not relevant, or maybe it's not actually achievable. So you do need to spend a lot of time thinking about why that goal is important. And it might be that the goal changes a little bit once you've worked through that. It might be that you tweak it, because when you dig down, like you said, to the whys, it might be that what you're actually trying to achieve is something very slightly different. And so if you reword your goal slightly, it might actually tap into your why and give you that level of why the goal is important, which could be the motivator and the focus you need.
And you said a word that I know is a massive trigger for a lot of people, which is time. You will have to spend time doing this. And one of the biggest limitations and barriers people have when it comes to personal development or creating any form of change in their life is they use the excuse of time. Oh, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough hours in the day, or I don't have enough money, etc. And I think as a society, we've become very used to making excuses, especially the notion of busy. I'm a single mom with 2 businesses. I have every excuse under the sun to be able to say, oh, I'm too busy to look after myself. But I make these things that are important to me, like health, a priority, because
Absolutely.
I know that if I do not look after my mental and physical health, I'm not going to have an income, because I'm going to be burnt out. I'm going to be not performing well, and I'm going to create a vicious cycle that I don't want my son to grow up and learn from me. So, of a morning, I'll get up And I'll do my yoga for 20, 40 minutes, and Harrison will eat his breakfast. He'll climb over me. He'll climb under me.
Yeah.
He'll be around me, but I do it and I show up. And, he's growing up as a 3-year-old, seeing mummy move
Yeah.
and seeing that, I say, babe, this is my time. This is mummy's time. This is important. Give me 10 minutes and then I'll come and be present with you. So he's learning that mum needs that time for her. Movement's important, as are boundaries and respecting each other's needs.
Correct.
So I think that whole notion of I'm too busy, we've got to drop that as a sheet, this badge of honor, and start looking into, okay, how can I make some serious changes in my choices to change the way that to create a life and a world that I want to live in.
Absolutely. And I mean, the truth is we do have time to think about what's important and to ask yourself the why. You can be doing that while you're driving to work. You can be doing that sitting on the train. You can be doing it when you're going for a walk. Sitting on the tractor. Exactly. So it doesn't have to be a formal exercise. You just need to have gone through that process and just thought about and truly understand, why is this goal important? Why are you actually doing it? What do you want to achieve? And I think you'll find once you do that, you'll get to the core of what the goal is that you're actually trying to achieve. And it might just be that there's a bit of a nuance there, and it might be that you will tweak the goal to make sure that it does actually capture your why.
And I think, if it's a goal that you've set before and not been able to achieve, use that exercise from last week where, okay, what thoughts come up when I've been in this situation before that I've not been able to achieve it? What emotions does that create? And I think if you look at why it didn't work and look at some of those patterns of behavior, that will allow you to even step back your goal one step further and go, okay, well, maybe I need to address this step and this level before I set this next goal. So peeling back those layers of the onion, going, okay, maybe the goals that I have up here need to be tiered back a little bit to enable me to achieve it, because you can do it. It's just understanding what are the limitations and how am I potentially self-sabotaging.
Absolutely. And that is part of the reporting on it and tracking it, and also the actionable steps, which we'll come to in just a moment. The other thing that it's really, really important to understand, what are the issues? So coming back to what you were just saying, Letitia, around, if you've had this goal before and you haven't been able to achieve it, there's a goldmine of issues there that are potentially going to resurface that may stop you from achieving it this time. So think about, what are those issues and what could you do that might mitigate or remove them? So in the conversation yesterday, we talked about potentially having an accountability buddy, somebody that holds you to whatever it is that the actions are that you want to do in order to achieve your goal. So sharing it, talking it through with someone who will ask you and challenge you when you're making those excuses about, I'm too busy to do this or whatever. It's good to have a plan. So it's really important to think through what those issues might be and how are they going to affect you. So yesterday we also talked about, a goal might be in your in increasing revenue. It might be increasing your social networks or your business networks in order to have more exposure. And that might be that you need to attend some social networking events. Now, obviously, COVID put a bit of a squash on all of that. So, whilst none of us would have ever predicted and ever accounted for COVID as a potential issue to achieving our goals, it's definitely something there in the environment. So, one of those issues might be that there is, what happens if you can't attend face to face? Do you pivot your goal, or do you go, okay, well, we'll do online forums, or you'll change it in a different way? So you just need to think through what those potential issues might be, and if they crop up, what is it that you're going to implement that will help you to overcome that issue and to continue on the path to achieving your goal. And then the due date. So we know that a SMART goal has to have a time frame. Now, we talk about the due date being the date that you want to have achieved the goal. It's also really important to remember that for every milestone you set, and you want to set lots of little milestones, lots of little stepping stones that you can tick off that you've achieved along the way, you want to put a due date for those mini goals, I guess you can call them, milestones. You want to set dates for those as well, because those dates are more frequent, and you're achieving small steps along the way on the journey. And by having lots of little due dates, you know whether you're achieving them. When you set up your little tracking spreadsheet or your dashboard report, or however it is that you're going to monitor your success and your progress, you want to be able to see ticks. You don't want to see crosses or lines or whatever. You want to see ticks to say, I've done that, I've met that one. And you can really, the best way to do that is to do it by a date. Did I meet it on that date? And look, the reality is sometimes you aren't. Things are going to happen that will derail you a little bit. And so, you know, you might have one bad month, but one bad month or one bad week doesn't mean you have to, you know, forgo the whole goal. So you just reassess and keep going, and you just do the best you can. So it's really, really important to make sure that you have your overall goal, which is the T in the SMART, the time bound, but that you have all of your little actions and your milestones have dates attached to them as well.
I found when I was doing that one, I set a goal from a revenue perspective, and then just did a quick calculation of what that meant. So it was going to be for this financial year and what that meant. And I went, is that really realistic over the next 8 months, given that we're coming into Christmas? So I just adjusted it to account until the next financial year close. So it gave me a bit more of a realistic target, because, you know, I'm great at driving myself, but if we're setting unrealistic targets, and when I mean my target was achievable, but potentially not with the time frame or the deadline that I set it. And also, you know, I think one thing to be mindful of is if you are doing revenue targets or turnover targets, that is that the best measurement to be setting, or should we look at profit a little bit more? You know, what's the saying about revenue is ego or vanity? And then, you know that saying? I should probably Google it.
I don't actually know that saying, but I understand what you're saying. And the other thing is, perhaps money isn't the metric. Perhaps it's an increase in customers. Perhaps it's an increase in orders or something else. Like, so rather than focusing just on money as your key metric, there are many other ways to measure whether you're increasing your business. So again, what you and I guess, sorry, I can see you were going to say something, but I think that the point you made about when you break it down into the individual steps or the milestones, it really does also help you to work out whether it is actually achievable and realistic. So again, you're bringing in the A and the R and the SMART about, you know, you've got your time frame. Well, is it actually achievable? And is it realistic to expect that I'm going to be able to do that in that time frame? And so, you know, each of these steps, it keeps tying back, and you can see how, as you work through the process and you're focusing on the SMART, you can see that they all help each other and they're all intertwined, and you're using the others to keep, you know, to do a check and balance. So you're using your time to check that achievable and relevant is relevant and achievable. So it really is a process, and it does, again, it sounds like it's going to take a long time, but you know, you can come up with a SMART goal in 5 minutes. I mean, we did one yesterday in 20 minutes, and that was really kind of dragging it out because we were talking about it and adding stuff. But it doesn't have to be a really long exercise, and you can do 90% of the thinking before you even have pen to paper. So
yeah, I think going through the worksheet's a really good opportunity of self-exploration and also digging into your business. And that saying, the saying that I was trying to think of is revenues vanity, profits sanity, something like that. And so it might just be an adjustment of, okay, do I need to increase my profit margins on a particular product or service? Because coming back to that notion of busyness, do we want to actually be busier? Do I have the capacity to be busier, or do I need to address my own self-worth and charge more because I'm not charging what I think I should be because of whatever those layers of emotion and thoughts may be laying back there? And that's what we don't get taught when we're doing MBAs and all the other business stuff is how our own emotional and thought barriers are impacting the way we do business. And women in particular are very bad at asking for what we think we're worth, over supplying and over giving, and undercharging. So do we need to assess some of those generational, habitual things, self-sabotage, subconscious behaviors, any of those lingering thoughts, habits, and behaviors that are actually making us busier than what we really need to be or should be, and impacting our mental, physical health and our business performance? So I think this worksheet's a really fun opportunity to start unpacking a lot of that.
And so if you're being honest when you're doing it, you might put some of those in as your issues. So it might be recognizing that I'm not very good at, holding my self-worth. So maybe I charge $200 an hour, but I really never actually charge anyone that because I feel uncomfortable with it. So I'm going to discount it and I'm only going to charge you $100. So if you know that you're a person that might tend to do that and to discount your value and undersell yourself, then that's an issue that you should put there and create some steps for yourself in order to address that, so that because you will have done your market research and you will have looked at your position in the market and found out what your value is. And that's what you would have done when you set your rates to begin with. So, go back and find some mitigations to help you to stick to what is your value, or whatever the issue is, whatever those issues are that you perceive may stop you. It gives you that opportunity to build in those support measures that will help you, all the mitigations and actions.
Yeah. And like we said yesterday, find yourself an accountability buddy. It doesn't have to be someone you pay. It could just be someone in a similar networking business group, mum's group, whatever it is, some form of cohort. Find a person that isn't going to make excuses for you, though. So friends aren't generally good accountability buddies because they're friends. A good friend will tell you when you're being, whatever, and hold you accountable. But generally, we will seek out, particularly if they're deep-seated subconscious behaviors, we'll find people who will reinforce our existing patterns so we can keep doing that. So push yourself to find someone who's value aligned, who themselves want to be challenged. So you're really going to push each other and say, hey, are you doing this? If not, why not? And let's unpack that together.
Exactly. And then, of course, the key to a SMART goal are your actions, because it's great to have a goal, but how are you going to achieve it? So you want to run a marathon? How are you going to do that? Especially if you're someone who doesn't move. So, it's step by step, kilometer by kilometer, and it'll take you time to build that up. So what are the actions that you need to do? With the goal that I went through yesterday, we also talked about, so for my sample goal, we were talking about increasing revenue. And so the ways that I had said I was going to do that was through comms and marketing, social networking, and doing social media posts. And so for me, those actionable items were, what were the steps I needed to take to enable those things to happen? So you'll remember we talked about I need to engage somebody to help me with the comms and marketing, because I don't know comms and marketing. I needed to do 4 posts a month on social media, and I needed to attend 2 social functions. But I also, in my list, I had there that I had to create a reporting format, and I had a due date. I was the owner. I also had any of the other actions that I needed in order to help me to achieve my goal. So this list, we've allowed 4 on the template, but the reality is this list, depending on how complicated or long your goal is, this list could be quite long, and that's okay too. But don't overthink it. Don't over action yourself. So just keep it with the actions that you need, but don't action every single thing. So, don't put an action that you have to go for a kilometer run, because obviously that's the goal. That's part of achieving the goal, but the goal will be that you want to meet your activity targets. So whatever your milestone is, your milestone will be about running 5Ks or running 1 kilometer regularly. That's your milestone. It's not your action. And we need to make sure that we just keep those separate. So the actions are, what do you need to do or to put in place in order to achieve the milestones, which then accumulate to make your overall goal. And you must remember to put a due date, because if it doesn't have a due date, then it's never due. And so you're not holding yourself to account, and you can't measure whether you've succeeded or not if you haven't got a due date. And then from there, you've got your checklist. So you go back and you have a look at what you've written down on your piece of paper, and then just check, is it clearly written? Are there any inconsistencies? Because if there are, you need to go back and you need to tweak it until it's really clear and concise. And who and what do you need to accomplish a goal? Because it might be a goal that you're writing for someone else. So if you're a manager of a team, you may be setting a SMART goal for someone in your team. So you want your team to develop a comms and marketing plan, and you want them to do it by a certain time in a certain way using a certain format or whatever. So you can be writing a SMART goal for someone else. And so you can understand, if it's for someone else, it very much needs to be clear and specific so they know exactly what's required. And so then you just go through, you work through the checklist, and you make sure that your goal is SMART and that it meets the 5 different requirements that make up a SMART goal. And then when that's done and you've ticked that all off, you can look back at that and you've got yourself a really nice, clear, SMART goal that you can then set off to achieve. The other part that we touched on yesterday was about, how do you track your progress? So it's really, really important, and don't underestimate the value of seeing those small steps being achieved. So break down your goal into smaller chunks, and then set little deadlines for those chunks or those milestones, and then measure it and track your progress. And if you're off course, then maybe you need to have a rethink. Was the goal achievable? Did you set it to be something that is too much too soon? So do you need to, as Letitia said earlier, do you need to just pare it back a little bit and have smaller chunks, or extend the time frame for which you want to achieve your goal? But be honest. You need to be honest when you're measuring your progress. Be honest about what you actually got done or what you achieved. And don't make excuses as to why you didn't achieve it. Just note that you didn't. Check the environment and make sure there isn't something that's happened, like a pandemic, that might stop you from being able, that's impacting you from being able to achieve it. And if something in your environment has changed, then that's the flag to go, okay, I may need to reassess this. Maybe I need to change some of the parameters within the goals. Maybe I need to change some of my actions, or maybe I need to add more actions. And then if you have to, make the adjustments, adjust your progress or your dashboard report, and then keep going. Don't abandon because you miss a milestone, because we're all going to have those weeks or those months where we won't achieve, for whatever reason, we won't get that one, but you don't abandon it at all because you haven't achieved one.
Just on the dashboard reports, one of the things that, Wholegrow for me is a startup, and we're evolving the platform. Like, our vision for where I want it to be is huge, and it's really exciting. And one of the things that we want to incorporate is sort of this dashboard, KPI milestone, goal checklist within the dashboard, with a whole bunch of amazing things behind it. But until that's built, do you know of any other apps that people could be using it and as this dashboard report, or do you just create it as a spreadsheet?
I generally just create it as a spreadsheet. It's really quite simple. It just involves needing to do some work on, I'm sorry, it's just got really noisy here. So
I can't hear anything.
Oh, that's good. So look, dashboard reports, they're literally just graphs. So you create a table on one page, and then you create graphs that just represent that data. And once it's set up, then you just continue to put the data in each month, each week, whatever your intervals are that you're checking, and it will start to bring that to life. So I can absolutely help people set up a dashboard. There are also LinkedIn Learning has, there is LinkedIn Learning modules around dashboard reports. And there's also LinkedIn Learning modules around creating graphs for data and stuff. So if you do have access to LinkedIn Learning, there's lots of stuff there. But if it's on LinkedIn Learning, I'm sure it'll be on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be lots of ways that you can find it.
I'm sure that, like anything with a bit of a Google, you can find a whole bunch of cheats and hacks or apps, depending how committed you are to it. Not everyone is au fait with Excel, including myself. I can do a basic sum, and
there's
that's
a goal
about
there
it.
for you.
No, not really. I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and I don't need to do that. And I think, that's a relevant point that you brought up here. Your goal doesn't mean that all of those action items you have to do yourself.
Correct.
Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know your opportunities, and know when to outsource. I'm massive on outsourcing. I also have a very, very, very trusted team that I do not micromanage. Some of my team I don't have to speak to for week, 2-3 weeks, because they just know what they have to do. The processes, the checks are all there. And that's the beauty of processes and systems, I will say that. But yeah, this doesn't need to be, I don't think it should be overwhelming. It should challenge you, it should push you. But if it's starting to feel overwhelming, you need to ask, why is it feeling overwhelming? Is it because I'm pushing myself to somewhere new, or am I doing something that just doesn't feel right? Is it too much for me to take on as a person? Do I need to outsource, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. And look, a dashboard report can be simple as some boxes on your calendar and with some numbers written, so let's go back to the analogy of a marathon. You might have it that you want to be running 1 kilometer 3 times a week for 3 weeks. And so you just put 4 boxes on your calendar with the letter 1 km, and then each time you run it, you just tick it off. And you can see, again, it's just a measure of progress. And then once you build up to 5 kilometers, once you build up to 10 kilometers, again, it can just be a piece of paper. It can just be a word table. It doesn't matter what the progress measure is. It just matters that you're measuring it, and that you can see that you're achieving each of those steps that's going to get you to your goal in the end.
Yep, awesome. Well, thank you very much for running through all of that again. Was there anything else that you wanted to run through on that checklist?
No, I'm that's the end of the checklist.
Yeah,
There
cool.
is a document that comes with the checklist that does sort of talk about some of the things that we've talked about today. So it gives you a little bit of prompting around how to fill it out. And the other thing I suggest is that you start a new checklist for every new goal. So don't try and run 2 or 3 on the same page. Just print out a new one, or just write the questions in a notebook and answer it. You don't have to use the actual checklist, but make sure you've got a clean page for each goal so that there's no ambiguity and things don't, blend into each other. That would be my suggestion.
And all of these worksheets and these guides, including yesterday's presentation, are all up on the platform. So you just need to sign up for free to wholegrow.me, sign up for a free account. It takes 2 seconds. And then within the academy, you go to courses, Seeds of Hope. So each of the week's workshops, the 1-hour workshops, as well as the Q&As, are within each of those modules. It's a learning dashboard, so it's very easy to find. And there's a bunch of other content and resources within WholeGrow as well. And like I said, we are developing this as time goes on. So make sure you engage, jump on these previous modules, reach out. All of these facilitators and partners are on the platform. Make sure you fill in, oops, don't know why my alarm's going off. Make sure you fill in your own profile so people can start engaging with you. And perhaps I'll set a bit of a challenge for the people on the platform. If you want an accountability buddy, who's up to be paired up? Because obviously you've been drawn to WholeGrow for a reason. Our values must align. So that's a really great place to find someone who might be able to support you or support each other in this journey of growth together.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And I'd be more than happy to be someone's accountability buddy. But that said, I'm also happy. You'll find my contact details at the end of the presentation from yesterday. I am more than happy for people to reach out to me if they need some help to get them started, or if they're not quite sure, maybe they're having trouble trying to really finesse their goal. I'm more than happy to help people so they can reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justine. I think today was a great opportunity to sort of dive into that a little bit deeper and I guess reflect on some of those other tools that we have been taught over the past 6-7 weeks. So thank you very much for being part of this. You've been a massive supporter, not just this week, but the previous weeks and leading up to it. So thank you so much for being part of it. And thank you to everyone for the past 7 weeks. It's been awesome.
Oh, thank you. This is something I'm very passionate about, and it's been great to be able to share this with the cohort. So thank you. And thank you for putting on this amazing series.
Oh, you're welcome. Hopefully everyone who sees this can tell their friends and family about it. It's a free resource. And, at the moment, I think people really need and want that level of support. But I also challenge you beyond getting, filling in and bringing in as much of all this information. That's great. But the next step is action and implementation. So I really challenge you to push yourself, take those steps to implement, reach out and get support from, the facilitators in this workshop, from other peers in the platform, or whoever you trust in your circle. And, like I said, please share the mission of WholeGrow. We are a startup, and we want more people to run healthy, sustainable businesses. So we start changing some of those negative, disruptive and unhealthy patterns of business that have been drilled into us over many, many decades. So thank you everybody for showing up, and I look forward to the next one.